Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Depending on where you are in this world, God bless you. Today we are going to finish up the book of Nehemiah in the New Jerusalem Holy Bible. We are starting in chapter 12, verse 27. The dedication of the wall of Jerusalem. At the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, the Levites were sent for. Wherefore they lived, to come to Jerusalem and joyfully perform the dedication with hymns of thanksgiving and songs to the accompaniment of cymbals, lyres, and harps, according to the Levitical singers assembled from the district round Jerusalem, from the villages of the Netophaatites, from Beth Gial, and from their farms at Geba and Asmaveth, for the singers had built themselves villages all round Jerusalem. When the priests and Levites had purified themselves, they then purified the people and the gates and the wall. I then made the leaders of Judah come on to the top of the wall, and appointed 2 large choirs. One made its way along the top of the wall to the right, towards the dung gate, bringing up the rear, where Hoshaiah and half the leaders of Judah, and also Azariah, Ezra, Meshullam, Judah, Benjamin, Shemaiah, Jeremiah of the priest, with trumpets. Then Zechariah, son of Jonathan, son of Shemaiah, son of Mattaniah, son of Micaiah, son of Zakur, son of Asaph, with his kinsmen, Shemaiah, Azriel, Malaliah, Gilaliah, Maiah, Nethanel, Judah, Hanani, with the musical instruments of David, man of God. The scribe Ezra walked at their head. At the fountain gate they went straight on up to the steps of the city of David, along the top of the rampart by the stairway of the wall, above the palace of David, as far as the water gate on the east. The other choir made its way to the left. I and half the leaders of the people followed them along the top of the wall, from the tower of the furnaces to the broad wall, from the Ephraim gate, the fish gate, the tower of Haniel, and the tower of the hundred, as far as the sheep gate, and they came to a halt at the prison gate. The 2 choirs then took their places in the temple of God. But I had half the magistrates with me, as well as the priest, Eliakim, Masasiah, Mim, Micaiah, Elionaiah, Zechariah, Hananiah, with the trumpets, and Shemaiah, Eleazar, Uzi, Jehohanan, Malchijah, Elam, and Ezer. The singers sang loudly under the direction of Jezrahiah. There were great sacrifices offered that day, and the people rejoiced, God having given them good cause for rejoicing. The women and children rejoiced too, and the joy of Jerusalem could be heard from far away. A golden age. For the rooms intended for the treasures, contributions, first fruits, and tithes. Supervisors were then appointed, whose business it was to collect in them those portions from the town lands awarded by the law to the priests and Levites. For Judah rejoiced in the officiating priests and Levites, since they, with the singers and gatekeepers, performed the liturgy of their God and the rites of purification as ordained by David and his son Solomon. For from ancient times, from the days of David and Asaph, they had been the leaders in rendering hymns of praise and thanksgiving to God. In the days of Zerubbabel and Nehemiah, all Israel supplied regular daily portions for the singers and gatekeepers, and gave the dedicated contributions to the Levites. And the Levites gave the dedicated contributions to the Aaronites. At that time they were reading to the people from the book of Moses, when they found this written in it: No Ammonite or Moabite is to be admitted to the assembly of God, and this is for all time, since they did not come to meet the Israelites with bread and water, even hired Balaam to oppose them by cursing them. But our God turned the curse into a blessing. Having heard the law, they excluded all foreigners from Israel. The second mission of Nehemiah. Earlier, Eliashib, the priest, who was in charge of the rooms of the temple of our God, and who was close to Tobiah, had provided him with a large room where they previously used to store the meal offerings, incense, utensils, tithes of corn, wine, and oil, that is, the part of the Levites, singers, and gatekeepers, and the contributions for the priests. While all this was going on, I was away from Jerusalem, for in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, king of Babylon, I have gone to see the king. But after some time I asked the king for permission to leave and return to Jerusalem, where I learned about the crime which Eliashib had committed for Tobiah's benefit by providing him with a room in the courts of the temple of God. I was extremely displeased, and threw all of Tobiah's household goods out of the room and into the street. I then gave orders for the room to be purified, and have the utensils of the temple of God, the meal offerings, and the incense all replaced. I also learned that the Levites had not been receiving their allocations, as a result of which the Levites and singers who performed the liturgy had all withdrawn to their farms. I then reprimanded the officials. Why is the temple of God deserted? I asked, and I collected them together and brought them back to their post. And all Judah then delivered the tithe of corn, wine, and oil to the storehouses. As supervisors of the storehouses I appointed Shelemiah, the priest, Zadok the scribe, Pedaiah, one of the Levites, and as their assistants, Hanan, son of Zaccur, son of Mattaniah, since they were considered reliable people. Their duty was to make the distributions to their kinsmen. Remember me for this, my God, and do not blot out the good deeds which I have done for the temple of my God and its observances. At the same time, I saw people in Judah treading the winepress, bringing in sacks of grain and loading donkeys on the Sabbath. They were also bringing wine, grapes, figs, and every kind of merchandise into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. So I forbade them to sell the food Tyrians living there were bringing in fish and every kind of merchandise, which they were selling to the Judeans on the Sabbath in Jerusalem itself. So I also reprimanded the leading men of Judah, saying to them, "What a wicked way to behave, profaning the Sabbath day. Was this not exactly what our ancestors did? With the result of our God brought all this misery down on us and on this city? And now you are adding to the wrath hanging over Israel by profaning the Sabbath yourselves." So when the gates of Jerusalem were getting dark at the approach of the Sabbath, I gave orders for the doors to be shut, and directed that they were not to be opened again until the Sabbath was over. I stationed some of my attendants at the gates to make sure that no merchandise was brought in on the Sabbath day. So the traders and dealers in goods of all kinds spent the night outside Jerusalem once or twice, until I reprimanded them. I said to them, "Why are you spending the night in front of the wall? Do it again, and I shall use force on you." After this they did not come on the Sabbath. I then ordered the Levites to purify themselves and act as guards at the gate, so that the Sabbath day might be kept holy. Remember this also, to my credit. Have pity on me in thy greatness of your faithful love. At that time, too, I saw Jews who had married wives from Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. As regards their children, half of them spoke the language of Ashdod, or the language of one of the other peoples, but could no longer speak the language of Judah. I reprimanded them, I cursed them, I struck several of them and tore out their hair, and adjured them by God. You are not to give your daughters in marriage to their sons, or let your daughters marry your or let their daughters marry your sons, or marry them yourselves. Was it not because of women like these that Solomon, king of Israel, sinned? Although among many nations there was no king like him, and he was loved by his God, and God made him king of all Israel. Even then, foreign women led him into sinning. Were you obedient when you committed this very grave crime, breaking faith with our God by marrying foreign wives? Of the sons of Jehoiada, son of Eliashib, the high priest, was the son-in-law of Sanballat, the Horonite. I drove him from my presence. Remember them, my God, for having defiled the priesthood and the covenant and the priest and Levites. And so I purged them of everything foreign. I drew up regulations for the priests and Levites, defining each man's duties, as well as for the deliveries of wood at the proper times and for the first fruits. Remember this, my God, to my credit. And there we have finished the book of Nehemiah. And I must say, this must be why not many people read the book of Nehemiah, because the names, there are so many families mentioned, because they all had a part in bringing Jerusalem back together and putting the wall up and bringing everything before God in the way that it was commanded by God to be done. And Nehemiah, bless his heart, he was on it. He wasn't fooling around. He was like, "No, you're not doing that. Do this instead, and bring that over here, and this is what this group's going to do, and this is what that group's going to do." And then he says, "God, give it to me as my credit." Bless his heart. And as always, I love you.